I was trying to escape some emotion, and the emotion that I had tagged was loneliness. What would happen if I spend 7 days away from it? What would happen in my life? More energy, mental clarity, even it feels like I was even more attracted to the opposite sex.
Dan, welcome to the podcast, man. Thanks so much for being on here.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Okay, I'm gonna cut to the chase. I have to ask, you're kind of like a fitness, personal development, self-help guy, huge followings. You've really built an incredible brand, and you have a very, very good message that I think is very authentic and honest and obviously valuable. I think that's why you've grown so much. Why would somebody like you talk about pornography?
Just cutting straight to the chase over here.
I'm just going for it, man. Yeah.
Going straight for the gut. I always say that my mess is my message. And for me, I look at things as like pornography, food, social media addiction. These are things that we use to get away from ourselves. For me, pornography was not really something that I was hyper addicted to. I just know that I was using it as a routine inside of my life. And I was using it in the way where I was trying to escape some emotion, and the emotion that I had tagged was loneliness. The thing about these things, let's just say it's pornography or even things like food, is there is always a physiological component to it and a psychological component to it. The physiological component to it is oh, cool, you get to release and you feel good, and you do it with some really crazy types of scenes and varieties of women and all these kind of things. But the psychological component was me escaping boredom in myself. And I remember there was a time where, and just in general, I do this on a regular basis with myself, where I ask myself, why is this a part of my life? So one of the things I did was ask myself, why is alcohol a part of my life, since I've been drinking it since I was in high school? One of the other ones was okay, so why has porn been a part of my life? And for me, I always want to zoom out, and I always want to go to my extremes to find what the balance is and to find out if I even want these things in my life in the first place. So I remember it was during a pretty bad breakup, and I was with this girl, thought we were going to get married, all that kind of stuff. We were living together, and then she ends up breaking up with me. And one of the things that I love to do is, or I like to say is when one closed door open or closes, or when one door closes, another one opens. So I needed to focus on something. I needed to focus on something to give attention to. And one of the things I tagged was this question, which was okay, so porn's been a part of my life, and I'm pretty sure it's been up a lot of my relationships as well. So what would happen if I spend 7 days away from it? What would happen in my life? And during that time, I believed on Reddit, there was the whole thing of the NoFap community and people getting all these benefits. And that to me, I was reading this PDF full of all these benefits. And I was just oh, cool. Boost testosterone, more mental clarity, all this kind of stuff. And I was okay, this is my entry drug into something that could be cool. So I ended up stopping porn for about 7 days, and I journaled every single day, sometimes even twice a day, of what was happening.
Just because you knew you wanted to document it? Or how did you know to journal about it?
I took it as this experiment for myself. And when you do experiments, you have to have observations, day-to-day observations. And to me, it's the experimentation part of it is what made it so exciting and cool. So I ended up journaling, not even every day, multiple times a day. 2:00, this is what happened. This is what happened. This is what happened. 8 a.m. This is what happened. This is what happened. And then I would look back on my journals and I'd be if I'm getting these types of benefits, which were more energy, mental clarity, and even it feels like I was even more attractive to the opposite sex, I was what would happen if I go 14 days? What would happen if I go 21 days? And I remember I went through almost a 6 month to an 8 month stretch. I don't remember how long it was, but it was super long, where I journaled every single day that I was away from porn.
Wow.
And I never went back. I never went back because something that I realized when I was away from porn, and the thing about it is that once you zoom out and you give yourself distance away from a certain habit, you are able to see what place it has in your life. And because of the fact that I was journaling every single day during this entire It was supposed to be 7 days, which turned into like this 8 month, and now it's like almost like multi-year long journey.
Yeah.
I realized that I was using porn as a way to get away from the emotions that I was facing.
Huh.
And every time that I would get the release, that would be my way of feeling like I'm in control of something. And it wasn't until I gained awareness and shined a light as to my behavior and why I was actually doing it. You can't have change without awareness. That's the whole thing. So
True.
so for me, it's like my journey into stopping porn turned into this entire journey of just like understanding who I was at the core level, and my
Yeah.
triggers as to like the reasons why I do things.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I did a video on it on YouTube. I actually got like crazy. It actually got crazy views. I guess like a lot of people are dealing with this stuff, and to me, it was one of the turning points in my life where I was getting control of the one thing I had control over, which was like my behavior and also my mind and also my relation to sex in general.
It's funny. That sounds like a lot of our client journeys. Like they hear, man, if you quit porn, you get all these benefits. And then you get into it and then you're like, oh, wow. In addition to these benefits, there's actually a lot about myself that I didn't know. Or you realize that porn is a coping mechanism and there's something deeper underneath, like you're talking about. At what point in this journey, because you kind of mentioned your initial target was just 7 days and now you haven't looked back. At what point did you realize, okay, this is like, I actually didn't realize how much I was using this to cope with. I think you mentioned loneliness and boredom previously. When did those dots connect?
I can't say exactly when they connected or the exact time that they connected. I do believe that change happens incrementally. And it's almost like you're every single day, like you're peeling the onion every single day. And there's a multitude of layers behind that onion. And it was more so this gradual realization of the awareness around what I was using it for.
Hmm.
And when I had that gradual realization, who knows, it could have been like month 8, or it could have been like week 6.
Yeah.
But the more that I had this distance away from it, the more I could actually look at it like almost like looking at a small organism and just observing the reasons why this organism lives, the reason why it does the things that it does to survive. And I do believe that the more that you have this space between your reaction or the action and the reaction that you would have, the more that you gain that awareness. But you can't have that awareness if you are not actually journaling and not actually giving yourself that awareness in the first place. I did
Yeah.
the exact same thing when I said, I'm going to stop drinking. When I told myself I'm going to stop drinking, I'm not going to drink for 21 days, I journaled every single day. And I do believe that this is probably one of the biggest tools that you can have when you're trying to get rid of something that has a negative influence on your life. Because what you're going to do is what's going to happen is that you're going to peek behind the layers as to your behavior. And you also don't get at it from the surface. What happens as a result is like you realize the actual thing that triggered it in the first place if you go back hard enough. So one of the things I realized back then was my dad. My dad actually, like, I was rummaging as I do as a kid, just like I'm so bored. I'm just like rummaging everywhere. And I go in and then like at the end, at the bottom of his hamper, I see this like VHS tape. That's how old I am.
Okay.
And I pop in the VHS tape and lo and behold, it's that. And then so this turned into this
How old
whole
were you,
thing
by
where
the
I would,
way?
what's that?
How old were you when that happened?
Oh man, I was probably 10, 11, 12 years old or something like
Okay.
that.
Okay. Got it.
And then it turned actually into this thing where I do it in secret, where no, my dad doesn't know that I know where his like stash is or his one stash, and then I would do it in secret, and I would just like look at it and be like, oh crazy, and then like I'd hear a rustle and then be like, shove myself and make sure everything looks the same. And then what we don't realize when we get back as far deep into like the past reasons like why we actually started in the first place, we don't see like, oh cool, like this actually has a relation to the behavior that I have around porn right now. Like porn to me is like a very secretive thing. People are not really overt about it, they're very covert. And then that also has this it also has an effect on our psyche where we're trying to like hide things away from people because we feel shame around them.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like if I didn't do the journaling practice, and if I didn't do the everyday consistency of journaling my experiences as I was giving this thing up, I would not have that awareness. And that awareness doesn't come like in this flash of light where this light bulb goes off. Oh, there's a reason why I am the way I am. It actually just comes from like the constant chiseling
Yeah.
of the journaling, the constant chiseling of awareness. It's almost like the person who, like, I think there's like the meme where the person keeps on like chiseling and he stops right before he gets to the diamond, and then you have the other person who just like goes straight for it. So it's almost like that. You just have to keep on doing it, and then eventually, over the course of time, that's where you're going to gain that awareness.
Yeah, it's so good. And man, it's interesting you're talking about awareness so much because Deep Clean is the name of my coaching practice that has helped guys quit pornography for years now. And we developed this little 3-pillar system. And the first pillar is building self-awareness. And our little proverb to go with it is, if you're not aware, it cannot be repaired.
Yeah.
And I love that you're hitting on that. That was not a setup. This was not pre-planned, by the way, but it's just cool that that for you was so impactful, because I think when we don't have that awareness, like, I mean, you help so many people improve their overall quality of life, get in better shape, make better decisions. And I have to imagine that when you're coaching people, this is a huge part of your initial process with them, is just bringing to light how certain things that they think are normal are actually really destructive, right? Or certain things that they're like, oh, I've heard you're supposed to do that, but like, what's the big difference? And it's like, no, dude, this is the thing that you need to focus on. Would that be true in that industry, that you're also doing the same thing, building that awareness?
Absolutely. So everyone thinks, let's just say, getting in shape is tactical. And they think it's like, okay, so tell me how many calories I have to eat, or tell me like the diet I have to do, tell me the workout I have to do. I'm just going to go do it, and automatically, like, therefore I change. That is not the case whatsoever. What you have to do is, and I say this in my practice, where awareness is the precursor to change. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. So you have to understand the reasons why you are the way that you are. And if you don't understand the reasons why you are the way that you are, you go through life unconscious, and you go through, even, you could do all the tactical things, lose 30 pounds, 50 pounds off of your body. But if you actually lack the awareness as to the reasons why you behave the way that you behave, you're just automatically going to go back to where you were. I'll use an example where one of our clients, he had a problem with binge eating every single night. He could control his diet all the way up to 8, but once 8 o'clock hit, it was like, it was like a free for all. Like, I'm just going to have pizza, ice cream, and I'm just going to keep on eating until I feel like I either feel shame or feel satisfied, which usually the shame comes first. So we asked him, and we do this thing called the theory of constraints, which is like, okay, so like a business, we always want to work on one constraint at a time. In your case, if the constraint is binge eating at night, the system is, first we have to gain awareness as to the root cause of why this is happening. And a lot of people are like, oh, I'm just stressed out and whatever. That's the reason why I eat at night. Okay, cool. Like, that's cool. But there's always going to be this physiological response and the psychological response to the things that you do and the constraints that you have, especially when it comes to getting in shape. So his physiological response was like, okay, well, I don't have a regular eating schedule. The quality of my food suck. Okay, cool. We'll fix that. Now, the psychological side is much different. We have to peel back the layers. So when we peeled back the layer with him, we went all the way back to when he was being raised by his grandma. So this guy was being raised by his grandma. He was a latchkey kid. His grandma was the one that taking care of him. So every single time, his parents would never come home at night. He would always be sleeping by the time they came home. Because he was such a rambunctious kid, his grandma would actually give him food to shut him up. So once she gave him food to shut him up, he would actually have something that was a reward and also something that he could control. And it wasn't until we gained awareness around why he does what he does, every single time he would do it, be like, I'm just doing it because I'm stressed. No. The stress is the symptom. It's not the cause. Once we find the cause, then we can actually go about with the healing. And then
Yeah,
once we
wow.
get to the healing, once we bring awareness, and once we start to heal this, and we also start to kind of like point ourselves into new beliefs, into new ideas of like who we can be, then we can actually do real change. We don't have to do just the surface level change. I always look at like tactics as like the conscious part, which is like the iceberg, which is like you have 10% at the top. Underneath, you have the spiritual and the emotional, the subconscious part of things. The conscious part is the part that will inform and communicate with the subconscious and the emotional, but it can only do that with enough awareness. So we have to make sure that we fix things at the root, which is usually going to be psychological, and then we use like tactical things like the physiology and the tactical things that we do to make sure that we apply action to fixing the constraint.
Yeah, dude, that's so powerful. And again, like so many parallels with how we would approach porn addiction as well. Like if we were going through a coaching practice, like I talked about building that self awareness. And funnily enough, our second pillar is healing of the heart, which is really about getting to those more core memories, core incidences, core dynamics that probably were formed at way younger ages than people even realize that caused that bad behavior. And from there, then you can start to address the beliefs and the more practical things. That's really where the practical things become effective. And I would guess in fitness, because even if I'm thinking my own fitness journey, I'm definitely guilty of putting the cart before the horse. Just give me the tactic, give me the thing. And I'm guessing that's how you get those sort of short-term results, but kind of yo-yo dieting or very cyclical patterns, but you're not actually having any long-term change.
Yeah, I mean, what's the point of, let's just say, getting down to 10% body fat or even losing 20 to 30 pounds if you don't have the requisite tools to keep it off? If you don't have the requisite tools to keep yourself there. And what needs, and the things that people think are the things that keep themselves there are going to be like, okay, well, you need sustainable habits and a sustainable diet, and you need like to keep tracking your data. I mean, like those are all cool, those are tactical, but the real change comes from self-image. The real change comes from your vocabulary that you use talking to yourself every single day, the beliefs that you have. Do you really
Yeah.
believe that you can keep yourself at 10% body fat, or are you kind of just like trying to prop yourself up in your mind? So we want to get to the core and understand that anything can happen. I mean, and what I mean by that is that you have some people that live life, let's just say from like, being out of shape their entire life, being like, can I actually do this for myself? And you might have some people who are dealing with porn addiction, and just asking themselves, am I ever going to be able to get rid of this? I rely on it so much. I
Yeah.
remember there was one guy that I talked to, and we lived in the same condo complex with each other. And we said like porn is like covert. No, this guy was overt with his porn usage. He would be like, hey, I do it in the morning. I go back home for lunch. I do it at lunch. And then I do it like right before I go to sleep. And he was like proud of it. And then,
Dang.
and then I was just like, well, do you understand that there's a reason like why you are so in tune with wanting to, let's just say, release yourself over and over and over. But the thing is that he just saw this as like a normal part of his life. He didn't see that there could be a disconnect between where he was, which is like needing to like ejaculate all the time, and not actually doing that and having something more fulfilling used for his life. So a lot of times we have to kind of like open up the light to say that, hey, guess what? This is possible. If someone else has done it, then you can obviously do it. But we have to go into the mechanisms as to like the reasons why you are the way that you are, and also to create the new self-image, either through mental imaging, visualization, affirmation, and also just like journaling, like we said, like to gain that awareness around ourselves.
Yeah, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. You mentioned going through the same process with pornography that you did with alcohol as well. So, what were the similarities in in quitting alcohol and quitting porn, and what were some of the differences?
Well, quitting, it's like same, it's like what the Thai people say, it's like same but different. Where quitting alcohol, to me, it was different in the sense where alcohol was always something that we have accepted as normal. So I started drinking alcohol when I was in high school. It was in my friend's basement. We got drunk, had so much fun. It was crazy, but it actually started way before that, because I would be at my own house parties when I was like 8 years old, 7 years old, and I would see my family friends have like this big case of beer, and it would be done by the time by the time the party was over. I remember one time I drank a little bit of beer and drank a little bit of wine just to see what it would taste like, and I was like, oh, this is disgusting. Why you
Everybody
guys
says that
do
first
this?
taste. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but it's also kind of it's also impression as well. So like the more that people have this impression on you, the more that you think that a behavior is normal. So
Yeah,
so with alcohol, I was just like, this has always been a part of my life ever since I was in high school. I've been pretty much like binge drinking and giving my liver hell every single weekend.
yeah,
And I've been doing this pretty much all the way up until like I was in my 30s, late 30s. And even then, even when I was in my 40s, I'd be like, okay, cool. Like me and my wife go out and we have a drink, and we have a couple drinks, get a little bit buzzed, and that was like our date night kind of thing. I always come with the same question, which is the idea of like, okay, so this has always been a part of my life. Why? Why do I have this as a regular part of my life? And sometimes it takes education to get yourself there too. So I remember I watched this. podcast that Andrew Huberman did. And I was looking at it and I was like, before I watched this podcast, I thought alcohol was, or at least like drinking alcohol on a recreational basis was healthy for you. And then I got to the brass tacks of like alcohol is actually, there's no healthy amount of alcohol out there. And I took notes through his old podcast, and that was like the one that kind of like shifted me to say like, okay, well, what would my life look like if I didn't have alcohol as a part of it? And just like anything, I did my test. Okay, so cool. 21 days, no alcohol. I'm going to journal every single day, and I'm going to find out what the hell this is all about. So I did it for 21 days, and then I was feeling like slight bits of energy, a little bit more mental clarity. My weekends were a lot better because I wasn't hungover, and I actually felt
Yeah.
like I was like pretty cool. And then I was like, okay, cool. Like, what if we do this for another 3 more weeks? And what if we do this for another 4 months? What if we do this for another 6 months? And it got all the way to 365 days to a full on year. And then I realized during that time, first of all, the benefits were crazy. I mean, here's the thing with getting rid of anything that is a vice inside of your life. You have to replace it with something that is worthy of your attention. Because if you don't do that, because I've heard so many people kind of be like, I gave up alcohol, but nothing changed in my life. And I'm like, because you didn't do anything else. You just gave up alcohol.
Yeah.
Like, you have to replace it
Right.
with something.
Oh,
And for
dude,
me, I
so
replaced
true.
it with just like more productive work, just more journaling, more kind of like going into myself, but also like more productivity for my business. And the benefits were crazy. I had like one of my best years in business during that year. I had one of my best growing years on social media, and then I was just like, okay, well, and also like regardless, my energy was amazing. My clarity of mind was incredible. My emotional control was the best it's ever been, especially on the weekends. Because on the weekends, if I was like hungover, then I'd be like, just you would not have as much control over your emotions because you're tired and you're
Yeah.
just not feeling the best.
Yeah.
So I did that test, and one thing led to another. And then it led me to realize, like, hey, guess what? Alcohol is probably a net negative, a 99% net negative. And the funny thing is I was like, okay, cool. Then I'll just like bring it back in moderation. and and
Right.
uh and yeah, it's not necessarily something that I regret, but it was a great lesson where I brought it back in moderation. And I was just like, okay, well, I am getting a little bit buzzed. That is like somewhat fun for the short term, but then I also lose 3 to 4 days of like good productivity. And also like you get the anxiety, like you actually are more in touch with the way that you feel. So you
Yeah.
do get the anxiety, you do get more stress. It's kind of like this idea where every time I drink alcohol, I always kind of like correlate with the sense of like I'm probably giving up about 3 to 4 days of peak performance and also another 3 days of just getting myself back down to baseline normal.
It's
Am I willing
crazy.
to make that trade? Probably not. And then now I'm kind of like, I'm like, all right, I ain't doing this stuff right now.
Yeah, that sounds like me with pornography. It was the same thing because you spend a couple days leading up to, an epic view session or binge or whatever, and then a couple days to get yourself back down psychologically, de-shame yourself, and then a couple days just to kind of get back to like any kind of peak performance if you even know how to do that within yourself. So you think about how much time is lost and how much energy, and it's crazy how much it can stockpile and compound.
Yeah, it's and the mind is a tricky thing. Uh, it will always move towards especially if you're not comfortable with it, it'll always move towards the escaping of the mind, and anything
Hmm.
you can do to turn that valve off. So when
Right.
people do porn or when people drink alcohol, what they are doing is they're escaping in one way, form, or another. So once we kind of like understand what we are escaping from, then we can go do the work to make sure that those things are either healed or we have come to terms with them.
So if you could only quit one of the two, alcohol or porn, which one would it be?
I would probably say porn.
Really?
The reason I would say porn is because the relationship I have with my wife is pretty much one of the most important things that I have. And the thing I realized about porn was when you're looking at other women and other people have sex, what exactly does that do to the intimate relationship that you have with your wife. And I have two daughters as well, which amplifies things. So I would probably say porn in that sense, because I would not want to have anything that makes me want to desire another woman more than my wife.
And did you notice that shift when you quit pornography and your
Yeah.
relationship with your wife?
Well, actually, I quit porn before I met my wife, thank God. And yeah, and the thing that I realized when I quit porn was it was so funny because I was probably like maybe 2 or 3 weeks away from it. And then I would walk down from my condo into the coffee shop. And then I would be like, whoa, these women are beautiful.
Yeah.
There's so many beautiful women around me, because my perception of women was so jaded as a result of seeing, all these enhanced, beings, whatever you call them, porn stars, and then that would warp your perception of what you see every single day. So
Yes.
I'm so glad that I gave that up, because I remember I just had way more of an appreciation for females, way more of an appreciation for women.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something we observe a lot. I mean, I know I've been clean of porn for 9 years now, and I think when you're really watching a lot of pornography, you kind of get programmed to just sexualize and objectify everything you see, right? Like it's hot or not. And if they're hot, then you start to fantasize about them. You start to like, you kind of just, it's all about you and kind of manipulating those environments for your own gain. And I remember that shift as well, just probably a couple months free of pornography and really not even thinking about it that much anymore. And just, yeah, you just look somebody in the eyes and there's not necessarily anything sexual about it. It's just, you just appreciate them for who they are. And like you said, like there's actually beautiful women everywhere. Like beauty is everywhere. But I think pornography kind of dulls our senses, or it stops us from actually seeing it.
It definitely changes the way in which we would perceive a normal looking human being. Because especially if you're, it's almost like you're psyoping yourself. It's like a psychological operation where if you see one thing over and over and over on TV, then it kind of makes you feel, or it kind of makes you perceive that to be real in the real world.
Yeah.
When the reality is that we don't, like, 99% of like women out there are not enhanced in the ways that they're enhanced. They don't look the ways that they look in porn, and they don't act the way that they act in porn or anything like that. And it almost takes you back to like what real life is. And then also from an evolutionary standpoint, we never had this much access to the different varieties of women, of uh, positions, of, seeing other people have sex. Like, this is like something new that we're just kind of like discovering at this point. And
Yeah.
I'm going to say it's probably not a good thing that that we have probably done that. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like the modern day cigarette. Like it's cool and it's normalized and everybody's doing it, and you even have people saying like, "Yeah, this is really good for you. It's good for your sex life and whatever." And I think with enough time, enough stories, and definitely some more research, which is starting to come out now, I think people will wake up to it. It's probably going to be a little bit harder to legislate than the cigarette was, but I do think, yeah, I agree with you. How long has it been for you now since you quit pornography?
Probably over a decade, most likely.
Oh wow. Okay, so it's been a long time for you as well.
Yeah, it's been a while.
What made you decide that you would talk about it online? Because I interviewed on Mind Pump. I don't know if you've heard of them before, a
Yeah.
big fitness podcast, and one of their hosts kind of went through his own journey, and pornography was a part of his life, and there were just bigger fish for him to fry. He didn't really think anything of it. And then he had a pretty radical spiritual experience and a spiritual turnaround. That's what caused him to quit porn. And then he had all these effects, and he was like, "What is this?" Like his life got so much better in so many ways. And so they started talking about it, and that's what kind of led to us eventually having a conversation and them interviewing me. And I'm just curious for you, was there anything that sparked this idea that maybe your audience would want to hear about it? Because again, I think there's a lot of people in your space who are not talking about this, and maybe have their own experiences behind closed doors, but aren't at least being public about it.
I am obsessed with the incremental compound effect of self-improvement. And that starts with me. It doesn't start with like trying to change the world. Like, I am quite obsessed with optimization. And also the optimization comes from first like having self mastery over our own self. So for me, I feel like what I do is I say things and I present things and I publish things in a way that I feel are going to be beneficial for people, but also like done so in a way where it expresses my own journey and kind of like the things that I've been through. Like the thing that people I feel like really attach themselves to is the stories that I have about the things that I'm experimenting with. And I do feel like there needed to be some lesson or at least some kind of way of talking about the effects of porn that would be personal and that would be relatable. And for me, I want to talk about things that changed my life. So porn was one of them. I mean, like I'm a health and fitness guy, but I really am just like a self improvement and optimization nerd. So yeah, it's like I run these experiments on myself, and once I see like an immense benefit out of it, like I want to share it with everybody, regardless of like what it is. So yeah, I feel like the giving up of porn and also, or maybe even having a wildly different relationship with it, it is going to change your life, especially if you are one that finds yourself addicted to it. So that's like the reason why I wanted to talk about it.
That's really cool, man. No, I respect that immensely because it's not easy to talk about. And I often share this that, when I first started my coaching practice in 2018, I don't think there was as much awareness about how destructive pornography was back then. And it was really hard to kind of get the message out. And it was really only the last few years that we've even gained traction online, where I think people are waking up. And I think it is actually because of, to be honest, people like you. And, you mentioned Dr. Andrew Huberman, who's talked about it, Jordan Peterson. There's, people that are, I think, raising awareness about its harmful effects psychologically and neurologically and biologically and everything else. So it's amazing, man. On the optimization side, Dan, what are you focused on? What's your experiment that you're running right now, trying to optimize yourself?
I've been experimenting with a bunch of different supplements. So, like the very first one had been creatine, and the normal recommended dosage for creatine, and also there's like a lot of stigma around creatine. Everyone like thinks it's like a steroid and stuff like that, but to
Yeah.
me, it's like one of the cheapest, most effective, most studied supplements on the planet. So there's usually the recommended dosage of about 5 grams per day, and I wanted to test out for myself what would happen if I max dosed it. What would happen if I do 15 grams, sometimes even 20 grams a day, and do that over the course of like 90 days. Now, mind you, the context of this was, and the reason why I wanted to try it was one, like curiosity. Two, it was, is because after you hit a certain age, actually, I believe researchers at Stanford did the study where they say like there are there are two times in your life where health and age can be accelerated, which is like 44 and 60.
Yes,
And I
I
was
know that
starting to
study.
feel it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was starting to feel it. After my work, like it would take me longer to recover from my workouts. And I usually kind of like had this identity where I'm like, I feel younger than my age, but no, I wasn't feeling younger. I was like, it was taking me time to recover from every single workout a lot longer than I was when I felt like, 20 or 30. So part of it was just like, okay, let's test this thing out. Let's see exactly what happens. I've also read some anecdotal experiences from people online. That's like they do upwards of like these doses and getting benefit out of them. So I was like, let's try it out. So I ended up doing it for 90 days, and I did it during like the or the period where I had the highest level of activity. So like, mind you, I was like surfing probably 3 to 4 days, 3 to 4 times a week, maybe sometimes even more. And I was working out probably 2 to 3 times a week on top of that. And what I found was shocking, which was like, I didn't feel soreness. I didn't feel like I needed to recover on a day to day basis. I felt like my recovery had accelerated. From a cognitive perspective, I felt sharper than I've ever felt before on a higher dose. And actually, I've been speaking to one of the leading researchers on creatine, this guy, Darren Crandall, and he's actually sending me these papers right now saying like above and beyond like 15 grams is where you actually start to see the cognitive benefits. So I wanted to test it out and I wanted to log like what my experiences were with that. and that was probably the last experiment that I did. I am experimenting with this thing called glycine right now, and just in general, like I actually got away. Like I've been I've been getting away from kind of like sleep trackers, but I wanted to put one on again to see exactly where my sleep is at. There's like a number of kind of like running optimization tests happening at the same time.
Sure.
And the last thing is also just like my blood work. So I did blood work recently. They did find like my biological age was like lower as like I'm 45, so I got it at like 42 and a half. That's not good enough for me still. But also like I got my body fat down to about like 15%, and I've been like I'm as like let's just say I feel as good and feel as athletic as I was when I was like in my 20s or 30s, but my HbA1c actually came back elevated, like way elevated above the level that I'd want it to be. And I do think that this is genetic because, like my dad, I talked to my dad and I told him about this. He's like, "Yeah, you probably got that from my mom," and because he's dealing with the same thing. So now I'm on this quest of getting my A1C back down to optimal levels through diet, through other means and measures. But yeah, that's like another thing that I'm working on. But yeah, it's all like a work in progress. So
That's cool, man. Yeah, I'm paying attention to my HbA1c. My naturopath is a big fan of like fasted insulin and fasted glucose as well, because yeah, diabetes is pretty rampant on my dad's side. It's there on my mom's side a little bit, and trying to guard it against it. And you're actually the second person I've heard. My other friend, he's a little bit younger than you, but I think he hit 40 or 41. This guy, very much like you, like a fitness guy, optimize everything. He used to compete in bodybuilding, so he tracks everything. And yeah, he like went and done blood work and found out he was pre-diabetic. He was totally shocked because it's not like he's eating sugar all the time or anything like that. But yeah, genetics is a big part of it. So
yeah, it
maybe,
is.
yeah. Sorry, were you going to say something else?
Oh no, yeah, definitely. Genetics play a part, but also it's just like it's if I'm being completely honest with myself, like I I am of the camp of flexible dieting. So it's like, it's like
So which means you enjoy yourself from time to time.
absolutely. So
Yeah.
this is actually just a really good, I guess you could say, lesson that it's not just about being at a lower body fat. It's not just about being at eating less calories or eating certain types of macros. Your micros matter. The amount of sugar that you're putting into your body matters. The quality of your foods matter. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. So maybe to tie these together a little bit, I don't know if you've ever had clients, especially since you've been talking more about overcoming pornography. I don't know if you've had clients that have struggled with that and are working through it. But hypothetically, like if somebody's gone through the process of quitting pornography and doing some of the work we've been talking about, building that self awareness and maybe identifying some of the more causal elements, rewiring their brain and their belief systems, and they're like, okay, now that I'm feeling better, and I was telling you about this off camera, that we do have a lot of clients who quit pornography, and it's such a confidence booster for them. Plus, I think to what we were saying earlier, when you quit something like pornography, you start to see bodies differently, including your own body, and want to take better care of it. So we have lots of clients who then go on to lift weights and run ultra marathons and do stuff that they always want to do, but now they finally feel like they can do it and they have the confidence. What would you be recommending to somebody who maybe has gone through that process? You kind of know where they're at least psychologically, and you know that okay, they want to take better care of their body. What would be a good place to start?
The very first thing is obviously like it's so cliche, but it's just getting started. You are actually creating change in your mind as a result of lifting the curse of pornography. So when you start to have new neurotransmitters and endorphins run through your brain, you want to take advantage of them. So I always start with the theory of constraints. I always start with what is the thing that needs attention the most. So if you're not exercising, I would probably start with exercise. If you are exercising, but your diet is, then I would probably start with your diet. If you are kind of like following some sort of diet and you feel like you're metabolically healthy and you are lifting a little bit, but your sleep is, then I would start with that. I would always start with the thing that is gonna be the biggest weakness of yours, because whenever you start with the hard stuff, then everything else above and beyond that becomes so much easier. So it's
Yeah.
like attack the weakness. For me, it's always attacking the weakness. Every single time you attack the weakness. And that to me is like being aware of what the major constraint is. If it like for me, like when I first got started for my own body, it was like exercise. Exercise was a thing that, number one, it changed my brain. It changed my own perception of self. I always look at changing these things as like entry level drugs to further improvement. I started with exercise because exercise felt so good. And every single time I'd be done exercise, I feel so good about myself. And then it just turned into this snowball where it's like, okay, well, I got this exercise thing down. I've been doing it for a long time. Let me focus on my diet now. Okay, I've been doing my diet for a little bit, and that's been, I have pretty good eating behavior. Now let's go into fixing my sleep. And it's just like whatever you do, you just start with the weakest thing first, or the thing that's going to have the most impact for yourself.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. And I guess, does that kind of go back to what we were talking about earlier, like building that self-awareness so that you at least have an understanding of what your weakest constraint is? Is there such a thing as misdiagnosing what your weakest constraint is? Or even if you're doing that, at least you're moving forward? Like how do you know you're doing it right?
Yeah, for sure. It's there is always going to be misdiagnosing because if people have been going through life in the days and lacking awareness and wondering what is the next thing that I have to work on, then what's going to happen is that sometimes you're going to climb up a ladder and it's not going to be the right ladder for yourself. So that is part of the game, and that's okay. And I don't think people should like over intellectualize or like wonder, am I doing the right thing? It's all part of like this whole game of self improvement. Sunk cost fallacy is one of those things that we have to look at. It's like, well, you keep on doing one thing, you think it's the right thing. One of the things that you have to understand is that you have to let go of the iteration. You have to let go of that thing you're holding on to as fast as possible when you know it's not serving you. And then you can move on to the next thing. And then it's all these like multiple iterations that turn into the thing that you should be doing. I always kind of like look at try everything, but also focus on one thing at a time. I think what gets people overwhelmed is that they try to fix everything all at once. And that's cool. You could do that. But then some things are going to fall by the wayside. And depending on how you talk to yourself, like if you just like condensed it down to just focusing on one thing, what would it be? And just ask yourself that. And the more that you can kind of get clear on what that is for you, then the more that you can just like focus in, hone in on that, make that a part of your lifestyle, make that a part of your behavior. And then once you do that, you can move on to the next.
Was this your approach when you quit pornography as well? Were you identifying constraints and kind of taking this approach?
I was, the constraint was porn. I mean, like I identified that. The constraint was like the coping mechanism that was porn. And the journaling process allowed me to really focus in on actually like my business. My whole thing was just like, okay, cool. Like I've got the health thing down. I'm getting rid of porn. What can I put this energy into? It was in building up my business so eventually it could be sold. So I was like, okay, so everything that I'm doing is going into growing that and making it sellable. Once I do that, then I can move on to like the next thing. And that's where, and that's why I say it's like any time that you give up something, it must be replaced with something that is a little bit more fulfilling, more like a project or something like that, because you're going to have new energy as well. And you're going to have to make use of that energy. So
Yes.
if you actually let that energy kind of like just be there and it turns into this anxiety of like unused energy, then it's almost like you're shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah, I know. When people, I think it's the first lesson in our program actually is we have people do a vision board of just what's your porn free life? Like just having an idea of like something that you're working towards. And for some people, it's like, hey, you could actually start working on that now. Because like you said, when you are in the thick of recovery and I'm quitting this thing that's been debilitating, that's actually kind of when you're the most primed to form better habits in other areas of your life, double down on your business or start a business, the business you always wanted to start, but maybe you didn't have the guts to do it or the courage to do it. So I love that, man. I think that's really, really powerful. So what do you imagine the next 5-10 years in the health and fitness space is going to be focused on? And the reason I ask is because again, just thinking about guys that are in recovery, wanting to take better care of themselves. And I don't know if you follow Peter Attia, but I've really I like his projection, which is that we kind of started with the basics of medicine and we've gone into a lot of supplements and pharmaceuticals and kind of a general approach, which is more Western medicine. It's like it's all based on the probabilities and whatever else. And he's kind of making a pitch for individual medicine, and an individual approach. And even in our coaching practice, I feel like we've become a lot more individualized the last couple of years, just being equipped to treat people, one case by case and that sort of thing. But what are your predictions, or what do you see ahead in this space?
Biotechnology is going to be crazy in the future. I do think that with the advent of AI, if we can live for the next, or keep ourselves alive for the next 10 to 15 years, then there is this chance that we may be able to live to 110, 120 as a result of working with AI and solving a lot of like the world's health problems, but also doing it from a prevention standpoint. I also say that community and being around people, at least from a coaching perspective, is going to be one of like the more it's going to be one of the more important things, especially with like AI making headway. The other thing I would say is is going to be just this massive amount of attention on GLP-1 medications. I've kind of changed my stance on them. I used to be hard no against like all GLP-1 medications, but I do see that a lot of people are getting a lot of benefit out of them, and it's helping them control their diet as long as they're doing it in the right way. So there are these medications that are coming out that not only help you lose weight, but they also help you overcome addiction. They also help mood disorders too. I mean, like there's a lot of stuff coming out right here. I'm not here to be like, I'm not being paid by big pharma or like being a pharma shill or anything
You're
like
not an
that. But
Ozempic ambassador,
these are
hey?
like exciting things that are happening. The other
Yeah.
thing that I would say in terms of the health and fitness industry, at least from an idealistic standpoint, is that we really get into more optimization rather than just like focusing in on making people metabolically healthy. I think
Yeah.
metabolic health is the first phase, and then after that phase is going to be optimization. How can we be the best humans alive? So for me, that means like obviously the core pillars, which are going to be sleep, strength, they're going to be movement, they're going to be cardiovascular, and also they're going to be your diet. But also, we're going to see advancements and tweaks in terms of like how we can perform at our best, both mentally and physically. So, optimization is going to be something that is going to be a little bit more prevalent. And I'm not saying optimization for the sake of optimization. It's kind of like what you meant with the individual medicine. It's like you will have certain things, even like doing your blood work right now, like things that people should do is like get your blood work done, see what nutrients you're deficient in, shore up those nutrient deficiencies, whether they be magnesium, B12, or vitamin D, whatever it is, and having a little bit more of that individualistic optimization route. So for me, it's like health is like this compounding effect. The more that you improve your health, the more that you're going to actually have a compounding effect on the way in which you perform. So I think optimization is going to be probably like way more popular than weight loss is going to be if we end up fixing that part of the society. And yeah, people are going to be looking at their health to see like how can I be like the peak performance human being.
Yeah, the GLP-1s thing is really interesting because it kind of feels like you said there's already peptides that are there that'll curb, cravings and all that kind of stuff, and not just for food, but substances and even pleasure. Like it even could have an application for what we're talking about today with porn addiction and all that. Sorry, you mentioned sleep, and I wanted to ask you about sleep optimization a little bit, if you don't mind, because when guys are struggling with porn addiction, and I don't know what your experience was, but definitely for me personally, watched a lot of pornography at night. Later binges, and then, it messes up your sleep. Or sometimes for me, it'd be early in the morning, not a ton, but we definitely have lots of clients where they wake up and it's the first thing they think about. And I feel like both those things can really offset just the course of your day, the state you're in, certainly how productive you are and how optimized you are from an energy standpoint. Top tips for somebody who maybe is not sleeping so well because of their porn addiction and wants to clean up that area.
100%. Yeah, I think sleep is one of the most important ways. It's like the best performance enhancing drug on the planet. And for me, I had dealt with horrible sleep pretty much my whole life. I'd have trouble going to sleep. It would take me like an hour to go to sleep. And then even when I go to sleep, I would wake up multiple times at night out of the blue just to either like wake up or I have to go pee or like whatever it is. Like my sleep was so disjointed. So I've been on this journey to be a high performance sleep athlete. So the very first thing that I would say for a lot of these people are going to be, I think that like this is like the modern thing right now, which is like the advent of screens. everyone, probably 99% of people on this podcast are going to be looking at screens at night in some way, shape, form, or fashion. So, what we have to do is we have to make sure that we block the light that's coming from the screens to our eyes. And you can do this either by getting off the screens entirely, or you can wear blue light blockers once the sun starts to go down to make sure that you don't have that signal from the screen to your brain saying, hey, it's still time to be awake. I've actually had one of my clients. I remember he's like, Dan, I can't go to sleep until like 12, and I just can't. I can't stop. I was like, all right, Brian, do this. Wear this at 6:30. I gave him a pair of blue light blockers. I was like, wear this at 6:30 every single night. Don't take them off, even when you're on screens. Just wear them. And he ended up doing that. And right off, like the first day that he did that, he was like, dude, like at 10 p.m. my eyes started to get droopy. At 10:30, I couldn't even stop. I had to go to sleep literally at 10:30. Now the worst thing is like now I wake up at 6 a.m. in the morning. Do I do with my life? And I was just like, well, that's like,
Better
that's
problem
what
to
it
have.
is. This is like the easy fix for me. Like that's like probably the easiest fix.
Yeah.
And then after that, what we want to do is we want to focus on quantity and quality. So I I really believe. Okay, so I have this. I think these sleep trackers. There's almost like the good and the bad kind of like impressions on these sleep trackers, which I think like goes with anything. But I do believe that with anything with awareness, you should be tracking the metrics that matter. If you don't track the metrics that matter, then it's almost like you can't measure what you manage. So, or you can't manage what you measure. So, I would invest in something like this or a Whoop band, and I would get a baseline understanding of like what the quantity and the quality of your sleep is. So when we get to the quantity of sleep, it's number one, you want to get 7 to 8 hours. You want to have regular sleep times, and you actually want to have like some form of a routine in the morning and at night. So the routine can look like what I just said: 6:30 p.m. I'm putting on my blue light blockers. They're not coming off. I'm not going to do anything else after that. Although I do have a couple of other things that people can try, which are really cool. Uh, and then we have the morning routine, which is just like, hey, you wake up, try to get some sun in your eyes, try to get some like physical activity, try to get some sun exposure, especially in the morning, because that is what's going to turn on your circadian rhythm, turn on your cortisol. And it's also going to start the process of turning on melatonin by the time you have to go to sleep. So you want to have like these regular sleep times. And that's why I say the blue light blockers are so important, because you can actually amplify the regular sleep time by blocking blue light and blocking any light that comes into your body. And
Yes.
then when we get to the quality of sleep, we want to do something that I call like time travel. So it's like time travel from like the time that you put your head on the pillow to the time that you wake up in the morning. People don't realize, or people who actually have this don't realize how much of a benefit it is, because I would actually say probably 50 to 60% of people out there wake up multiple times at night. And then this disrupts their sleep. So
Yeah.
things that you can do in which to amplify the quality of your sleep is like I call it like throwing shit up at a wall to see what sticks, because not everything is going to work. So if, let's just say, like you find that you're breathing at night through your mouth, that is going to exacerbate sleep apnea. That's going to make you snore. It's going to make you breathe through your mouth, and that's also going to disrupt your sleep. It's going to make you wake up in the middle of the night. So one of the things that I do is like I put tape on my mouth, and this is not something that you do for the rest of your life. What happens as a result is that you start to force your nose to do the breathing for you, and then you also have the habit of keeping your mouth closed as you're sleeping. And after you do this for, and let's just be honest, like you're going to do this for probably, if you've been dealing with this problem for a very long time, you're going to do this for like a year and a half, 2 years, until you can actually have that normal closing of the mouth and breathing through the nose. And also, we have to understand that the nose is almost like a muscle. If you don't use it enough, it's going to atrophy. And that's why a lot of people who try to breathe through their nose, they have so much problems with it, because they haven't even used it. So that's why we tape the mouth. So that's like one of the things that we can do. The other thing that we do is like environment. So you want to make sure that your environment for sleep is going to be incredible. So environment is that invisible hand that dictates your sleep. What we want to do is we want to create an environment that's conducive to sleep. So when it comes to the nighttime, the biggest mistake that I see people make is that they have like bright lights in their house, like everywhere when it's night. And then they don't realize that this is having an effect on their circadian rhythms, because the light is essentially hitting their eyes saying, hey, what's up? It's still time to be awake. So inside of our house, we actually dim the lights. We make sure that we have like barely minimal light, especially when it's dark. Kind of like have we can still see, but there's just like barely minimal light. So we want to set up an environment that kind of like shows that is going to be more conducive to sleeping. You can set up your room in a way where you have blackout shades. You have your blue light blockers, obviously. And if you actually you live in a high noise environment that usually makes you wake up, then what's going to happen is you can put a white noise machine in there. And then the white noise machine is going to make sure that you just get rid of all sounds and you're only hearing the white noise machine. Now, the thing that I do that I've been sharing with my audience that I feel like is amazing is the sleep tea. So, about 2 hours before I go to bed, I make a sleep tea for myself. I use chamomile tea, and I have about 5 to 10 grams of glycine, and then I put in sea salt inside of the tea. I drink that probably 2 hours before I go to sleep, and I have it with like magnesium glycinate. And then I find that this is incredible for not only helping you get to sleep, but also helping you stay asleep. So the glycine is supposed to help REM sleep and also quality of sleep. The sleep tea or the chamomile is supposed to help you go to sleep. It actually is like a relaxant. It's like Valium without the side effects.
Okay.
And the other one is going to be the sea salt, which may seem counterintuitive, but for people, there's about 40% to 50% of people who deal with nocturia, which is like them having to wake up and go pee at night. So
Yeah,
the sea salt
that's
allows you
me.
to
I do that
absorb the
every night.
water. Do you do that
Oh,
or?
yeah, I do that every night. I've been trying to do something about it for a couple of years now. So
Okay, so sea salt. So you're gonna be putting that in the tea, or you can actually just do electrolytes or something like that at night. And
okay.
the sea salt is supposed to allow you to absorb water into your body a lot more efficiently than just drinking
Oh,
water. Also,
so you
the
don't
other
want to
thing is
expel
like
as much?
what's
Is
that?
that sorry? So then your body doesn't want to expel as much, so then you don't go to the
Exactly.
bathroom in the middle of the
Exactly.
night. Okay.
Exactly. So your body doesn't have anything to expel because you have absorbed it properly, you have hydrated properly using electrolytes. So the thing that I would say is like I would probably drink like some form of electrolytes during the daytime, and then at night put the sea salt inside of your tea or whatever you choose, and then it's just a test. So you want to test it to see if it happens. Now, the other thing that I would say about nocturia is it is going to be a little bit of a struggle bus period in the beginning because you have like had the habit of like waking up in the middle of the night to go pee. So if you ever wake up in the middle of the night, sometimes you can't go back to sleep, then you're like, all right, I'm just going to go and pee kind of thing, right?
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So you actually have to like if you ever wake up in the middle of the night, you actually have to say I'm just gonna do some deep breathing. I'm gonna count to 10. I'm just gonna allow myself to sleep. I do like the 4-7-8. So
Okay.
because anytime that you're counting, you can't think of anything else. So I do
True.
that for about like 3 to 5 minutes, and I'm like back to bed. But you have to like almost like force yourself to not get up and go pee. And then if you
Huh.
do that enough times, then you create that. Then you
You create
create
that
that
new
habit.
habit.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And 4-7-8 is 4 seconds in, seven, hold for seven, out
Yeah.
for eight. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm going to start with, I mean, I take LMNT every day, usually midday before a workout, that kind of thing. So I have electrolytes during the day, and then I'm going to try, I think I got some Celtic sea salt still. So I'm going to try some of that in the evening and see what that does. About 2 hours before bed, you said?
2 hours before bed, chamomile with the glycine and the sea salt. A lot of people have been getting some benefit out of this, especially people who like have problems like waking up, going to pee.
And I know you mentioned putting the blue light blocking glasses on at about 6:30. Is that time split? Is that like you and I are both in Canada? Does that
Yeah.
fluctuate based on season or somebody's sleeping
Yes.
schedule, or how do you know what time?
So now I'm like living in the West Coast Canada. So for me, the sun starts to go down at 7. So I'm putting them on at
Yeah.
7 right now. It's usually
Okay.
when the sun starts to set. That is when you want to be putting them on. And then eventually, like later on into like the summer, the sun's going to start to set at like 8 p.m. or whatever. It's like you just want to tie it with when the sun ends up setting. So in the wintertime, when the sun sets at like, let's just say like 5 p.m., that's when you put on the blue light blockers. Essentially, what we're doing is we're just attuning ourselves with the setting and the rising of the sun, which is what our ancestors did, which is what we should be doing in the first place.
Yeah. And I guess is what our bodies were doing 80 years ago before the TV and everything else,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, dude, this has been so good. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Like I said, I just admire people who I haven't built a business around quitting pornography like I have. My story's baked into the work I do, but for you to go out of your way, you're inspiring so many people. And like you said, the video, we'll put the link in the show notes. Everybody should really go check it out because it's really, really well done, and the response speaks for itself. People are resonating and need people like you just kind of, I think, sharing about their experimental approach to quitting pornography. It's really cool the way you've gone about it. So
Thank
thank
you.
you for all you're doing. For people who want to find out more about your story and sleep optimization and health and fitness, all the stuff that we talked about today, Dan, what's the best way for them to do that?
They can just go to dango.co. It's my website. And we also have like free sleep guides and free protocols on like the things that we just talked about right now. So
Oh, great.
everything that we do is like, free information. So you can just like grab it off the website and you should be good to go.
Okay, you got it. We'll put the link in the show notes. Dan, thanks again, man.
All right. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.